Hey everyone, this is Luca. I'm really excited to tell you that my course on the basics of R for ecologists is up and running. So if you're an ecologist and you're just getting started with R and feeling that frustration of the learning curve and just need something that can take you by the hand to really understand the solid fundamentals of using R for ecology, check out my course. Just go to r4ecology.com. There's a link also down below, and hope to see you there. Hey everyone, my name is Luca Negoida. I'm here to show you a little tutorial on how to use R Markdown, but more specifically, how to use R Markdown for learning R. So this tutorial is going to be split into two parts. One is going to focus on R Markdown specifically and how to get started with it, and the other part will be me going into a bit about how you can use R Markdown to better learn R. So if you enjoy this video, please click the like button down below. It will help YouTube's algorithms be able to show my video to more people, share and spread the knowledge as much as possible. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to click subscribe as well, and you'll be notified whenever I put something else out. So with that, let's get started. So I'm going to keep everything as simple as possible and not going to go into the nitty-gritty or teach you anything you really don't need to know to just get started with using R Markdown. My only prerequisites are that you have RStudio and R already downloaded and installed on your computer in order to follow around with this tutorial. So if you don't, be sure to check out my lesson. I'm going to include a link here on how to do that, how to install R in RStudio if you haven't already. And in fact, I recommend that you watch the first 3 lessons from my course on the basics of R for ecologists, which I'll include links for all here. They're all also videos on my YouTube channel. They're really short videos, and they'll show you the very, very basics of getting started with R, which will help you through this tutorial. In those lessons, I also show you how and why I changed the editor color theme to these darker colors. All right, so let's get started. So first, go in and open RStudio, and you'll be shown this blank console, exactly what you see here. And then go to File, New File, and R Markdown right here. Don't select R Notebook. It's similar, but a little different. We want to do R Markdown. All right, and here we're going to give it a title. Let's do it. Let's give it R Markdown Tutorial. If I can type tutorial, author Luca Negoida, put your name there. It might already be in there. And make sure to select HTML here. Now there's ways to export to PDF and Word as well, but we're not going to go over that in this tutorial because you have to install a few other things to make that work. And HTML is pretty much all you need anyway. So just leave that default HTML selected there and click OK. So this should be the default document that you get. The top part of the document here includes some parameters that you can set for your document. Leave everything as it is for now. No need to change it. We'll work on that later. So below that, you'll see this code chunk here for setting some global options. But for now, no need to mess with it. And in fact, you can just delete this whole thing. No need for that for now. And now the rest of this document is actually a bunch of example text and code to show you what R Markdown can do. We're just going to delete everything to start from scratch, but before that, I want to show you what R Markdown can do using their examples. Now, keep in mind too, one more thing is that you may need to install a few packages in order for R Markdown to run on your computer. So when you try to create a new R Markdown document, you may be prompted with, do you want to install or update certain packages? Click yes if you get that. If you don't, or you don't even see the R Markdown, then you'll want to, before you do anything, you'll want to go to File, New R Script, and you're going to want to install .packages R Markdown. So now if I, and you want to add quotes around that. So now if I install that, it's going to tell me that it wants to update it since it's already installed. In your case, it'll just install it. So I'm just going to click cancel. And the other thing you'll want to install is Knitr, K-N-I-T-R. And again, it's already installed. It will ask me if it wants to update it. I don't need that. So you'll want to install these two and then perhaps restart R, and then you should get this this option here to create an R Markdown document if you didn't have it before. Okay, I'm just going to close this and not save it. All right, let's first save this document here. I'm just going to Command S to save, and you'll see it's saved not as a .r but .rmd, R Markdown. I'm going to save it here as, I'm just going to create this new folder here called R Markdown. And inside that, I'm going to save it as tutorial. All right, so assuming you have everything installed and you've been able to open up this new R Markdown document, now once you have it and you've saved it, go ahead and up here, you will see this knit button. And you no need to click on here. We're not going to knit in any other way. We're just going to knit using the default option. So just click right on knit. What happens is that this document gets turned into an HTML file. So all of this text here has gotten turned into this file, which is really cool. It's a combination of text, of R code, the output from the R code, including plots, and various other formatting options. So why is Markdown so awesome? Well, first of all, you can organize your analyses much more clearly for reproducibility. So for example, here, this is just an example, but you can have all your text explaining how you did the analyses with the actual code that does the analyses and the output figures and results. So you can share what you did with anyone that you want to very easily, and they can see exactly what you did and they can replicate it themselves if they want. You also remain accountable for your analyses because what you did is clearly visible, and you also can't cheat these outputs. In fact, the final knit document is exactly what the R code would give you if you run this whole thing. So you can't just fake your outputs. If someone runs this code, they will get exactly what you got below. You can also create tutorials to share with others. Hey, kind of like what I'm doing here, but also like the blog posts that I write. They're all written in R Markdown, and it's an easy way to combine regular text as well as R code. And finally, you can use this system to help you learn. So I'm specifically going to talk about how you can use it for learning R, but essentially it's a platform where it's a system where you can enter in all your information, all your notes about the learning process, and then also include the actual functions and code as you're learning so that you can essentially create this solid record of what you were able to learn in the form of this really neatly polished file, HTML file in this case, that you can then reference back again whenever you need to remember something that you learned or want to go over the material again to study for an exam or just for learning R and getting better at it over time. All right, so now let's do this ourselves from scratch. We're going to delete all of this so that all we are left with is this header section, which you don't want to delete. So you can see here in the knit document, you can see the title was included, your name as the author and the date. And then this output section here just indicates that it's going to be output as an HTML document. And again, you can also output as a PDF as well as a Word document, but we're not going to do that in this tutorial because it does require installing a few other packages and that can be a little finicky. So I'm just going to keep it simple for now, and really all you need is the HTML file. It's quite versatile enough as it is, and you can share it online really easily and print it as well. So that should be adequate enough for now. So if we run this again, so I'm just going to save it again. If we run this again by clicking knit, you'll see that everything else disappears except for this header section, as I mentioned before. Okay, now for the hard part. Okay, I'm just kidding. Type whatever you want here. So let's do the classic hello world. And if we click knit, and notice that even though we didn't save this, because this is in blue, so if I hit Command save, you'll see that this turns from blue or purple to white. That means we've saved the latest version. But let's say even if we haven't, so we're just going to say hello first. So see, it's not saved yet. When you click knit, it automatically saves it and creates the final knit document. So look, we typed hello, and there we have hello. Okay, let's complete that phrase. Hello world. There you go. Congratulations, this is your first R Markdown document written all on your own. All right, it's not very exciting, but let's move on. So basically, this is now a basic text editor. You can write whatever you want in here, and when you click knit, it will create or knit your HTML file from the R Markdown file document. So if I click knit, there it is. I'll make that O a little O. Okay, so it is just a basic text editor, but there's a few fancy features because it's Markdown. So if you want to type a heading, let's make hello world a heading. One £, or the number sign, gives you heading 1. So if we do this, you'll see hello world is nice and big because it's heading 1. If you do 2 £, now it's important to leave a space, otherwise it might get mixed up. Like I think if I don't leave a space here and just run that, yeah, see, it just adds that pound attached to hello world, doesn't know what it's doing. So it's important to leave spaces. So I'm going to leave a space there between pound and hello world. If you do 2 £, that's heading 2, 3, oops, heading 3, 4, heading 4, heading 5, and I think it goes to heading 6, but I'm not sure. Let's see. One more. There it is. Yep. We've got hello world is heading 1, then we have heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and heading 6. You can also add bolding. So let's make a bigger heading using asterisks. Using the asterisk. Can never pronounce that right. The asterisks. The asterisk. Right? Yeah. Italic, if you just use 1. If you use 2, it becomes bold. I'll just write that normally. And if you use 3, it becomes bold italic. So now if we knit this, you can see these headings, italic, bold, and bold italic. You can also list things with numbers. So if I say 1, list item 1, 2, list item 2, etc. If we run that, see we have these number 1 and 2. You can do bullets, just using little dashes. Bullet 1, bullet 2. I think you can use asterisks as bullets too. Let's see. See what that does. Okay, yeah, it was the same thing. So the dash or the asterisk gives you the same bullet. Very cool. You can also add links to the text. Okay, let's leave our paragraph here and go on, start a new one. You can also add, wow, I keep making these O's big. You can also add links to your document, for example, and then use these square brackets. Here is a link to my website, and then start round parentheses and type your website. It's important to include the HTTPS, so https://www.r4ecology.com. All right, now let's knit that. And there it is. Here is our link. Now let's say we wanted to make this whole thing bold. All we have to do is put those 2 asterisks before and after, and this is not going to work. No, look at that. It worked. I thought it was going to turn purple, pink like that, but it didn't. Either way, look at that. It worked. So you can also add all sorts of HTML code, however you like. to this document as well, but I'm going to leave that out of this conversation because I want to keep this as simple as possible for you. But just mentioning that that's an option. There's also a really cool R Markdown cheat sheet made by RStudio, which I'm going to link here, which has all these different things that you can do, all these different formatting things you can do in R Markdown. But don't get overwhelmed with it. My suggestion is don't even worry about that for now. Just this is pretty much all you need to know. Making a few different headings, bold, italic, some bullet points, some lists. It's pretty much all you need for really creating really nice documents of your R learning process as you go along. So that's my suggestion. Don't get bogged down with too much more. But now I'm going to go into what R Markdown is perhaps most famous for, because it's not just Markdown, it's R Markdown, and that is actually including code chunks of R code. So to do that, we're going to go up. I'm just going to make this a little smaller so you can see this. There's this insert button, see insert button up here, where if you click on this little arrow, you can see you can insert all kinds of other types of code, but we're again going to just leave the default because we're not doing any other programming right now. We're just doing R. So we're going to just click here, go to wherever you want to insert the R code, click on this insert button. Oh, I guess it pulls down this menu no matter what. Okay, click on R, and here we have what is called a code chunk. And you could have also typed this out by hand, but it's way easier to just click that there. These are not normal quotes, single quotes. They're the weird quote symbol that's located under on a Mac keyboard, US keyboard. It's located under the escape key alongside the tilde, the this symbol, if you can see that. Don't worry about typing this. Just click on the insert code chunk, and then inside here you can now type whatever you want as R code. So if I typed hello world phones, interesting. If I type hello world and try to run this, boom, we get an error. And that's because you can't just type hello world into R. You need to make it into a comment. So now we're going to add a pound hashtag there. Keep in mind, this is not the same thing as this here, which tells you that it's going to turn the text into a heading. Instead, in R, when you use the pound sign or the hashtag sign, whatever you type after that hashtag is commented out, meaning it is not run as actual R code. It's run as a comment. So now if we knit this, take a look at our document as it's coming along, boom, here we go. We have a little chunk of R code, and all we have in this R code is a little comment, hello world. But let's push this, let's take this a little further along. So let's play around with some numbers and plot some data. We'll say, okay, my code here, just another little comment. It's always good to comment a lot in our code, make it all very clear, make it very clear what you're doing. And the cool thing about our Markdown is that you don't have to put tons of comments inside the actual code bit. You can write everything you want around before and after the code chunk, and you can go into much more detail and make the formatting all fancy and everything, so that's really clear what this R chunk of code is going to be doing. All right, so let's say, and let's create this variable answer, and into answer we're going to put 2 + 4. Then let's see what answer looks like. We'll just run answer on its own to see the result. Then we'll create another one, my data. And we'll use the cars data, which is actually already uploaded into R when you start the new session. You just won't see it in your environment, but it's there. So this should work, even though we haven't actually uploaded this data set separately. It's already there. And let's take a look at what my data looks like. So now, if we knit this, scroll down, we can see that the code chunk has actually been split into every code chunk that has an output. So here is where we wrote in answer is 2 + 4, put that into the variable answer. And then when you run just answer on its own, it creates an output. So now we have this second box under here that shows you the output. So these hashtags here just indicate that it's the console output. The 1 in brackets here just indicates that it's just row 1 of whatever else. So if you had tons of numbers here and it created a new row and wrapped around, you'd have a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3 and so on. So you can ignore everything that's highlighted right now there. The only important thing is the 6, because 2 plus 4 is 6. So there you go. Then the other part of the chunk of code was my data, putting in this cars data set into my data. And when you run my data, it shows you this data set of cars data. Not really sure exactly what it is, but it looks like one column is speed, one column is distance, and somehow those are related and mean something about cars. So that's all there is to it. You can also, as you're working through the code yourself, so that you don't have to knit and see everything go each time, and then if you have an error, like let's say I forgot to type that R there on answer and I try to knit this, instead of this knitting and showing me what's wrong, I'm just going to get this error down here, which is actually harder to read or understand than actually if you were going through the code line by line the way that I suggest in my tutorials. So what you can do is actually go through the code line by line. And the way you do that is the same as using an R script. You click the cursor wherever you want, and then you hold Command on a Mac or Control on a PC. And you hit return on a Mac or enter on a PC. And as you run through it, you will see the output. There was no output with Hello World, and it kind of just skipped through this one and then this one. It went all the way down to the first line of code that actually did something. And so when that line of code runs, nothing actually happens because there's no output. But then when we run this next line of code, boom, we get this error, object answer not found. That's an error. Let's put that R back in there. Now when we run that line, there you go, we have the output. And then we keep running the lines of code. We run that one. Again, there's no output because we're just putting this cars data set directly into this new variable my data. But then when we run my data, we get this nice, neat little output of data. So that way we can walk through and bug check the code to make sure that it works. And now that it's working, we can go back and click knit. And it will come up and work nicely here. Okay, now let's create another chunk of code. We'll say, just in the markdown here, we're just going to say, here is my next chunk of code. This is how you use the plot function to plot a scatter plot, let's say to create a scatter plot. And the other cool thing is in our markdown, you can use that weird, not really a single quote thing that I mentioned before that's used here to create these code chunks. Again, it's located under the escape key on the left side of the keyboard on a Mac American keyboard. Also on the same key as the tilde, the little squiggly thing. So if you use those quotes, those types of quotes, and you add one around, you add them around a chunk of text, it'll turn blue or some other color depending on your color scheme here. And that turns this into a little code snippet. So instead of it plotting with the regular font that gets output in the HTML document, it'll turn it into a fixed width font similar to the R code. So maybe it's better to just show you rather than trying to explain it. So here, I don't know if you can see it, but maybe I can make this really big. So here's my next chunk of code. This is how you use the plot function. So you can see plot is kind of circled by this like gray box, and now it's written in the same fixed width font as code. So it's a little code snippet just to make it clearer that this is a piece of code you're referring to. You don't have to do that. It's just another quick little formatting tweak you can do and use in our markdown. Make this small again. Can I make this small again? There we go. Okay, so now let's create our next chunk of code. And we're going to say plot cars $speed is a function of cars $dist. So for anyone totally new to R, basically what I'm doing here is I'm using this cars. And actually, I don't even have to call it cars. I can call it my data because I already saved my data as its own data frame. I already saved the cars data set as my own data frame called my data. And the $sign tells me select the vector in this data frame called speed. So if we were to select that and then do command or enter or control enter, you can see that it's just this vector of values under the speed column. And then this is the vector of values under the distance column. And we're saying plot this speed column as a function of this distance column. And essentially that's saying the y variable, the x variable on the x-axis on this plot will be a function of the y-axis on this plot. So if we run this, we get this nice little scatter plot here. And if we were to run the whole thing using init, you can see that this, using the plot function, also created this little scatter plot here. So it's important to note that like a regular R script, you do have to run all the code chunks one after another if certain variables or packages that you need lower down in the code are located somewhere higher up in the code. So for example, here I'm referring to my data, and I only define my data here. So if I were to restart R, so I'm just going to go to session, restart R, and clear output. I just restarted everything. Now you can see that the environment is empty. So we created this variable my data from this cars data frame. So if we were to try to run this piece of code here, you'll see that there's an error, my data not found. And so even though we click to knit the whole thing and it works because when knitting the whole thing, it runs all the code from beginning to end. So even though it ran everything already through the knitter function, when we actually go in and want to view the code line by line or run this chunk of code, you can click this green button or just run it line by line like that. You'll still get this error because in the environment, there's no variable called my data yet because it wasn't saved there. So you actually have to go in here and run this chunk of code first and then this chunk of code to make sure that it's all in the environment. You can also, let's say we want to run this, and we know, let's say our Markdown script is really long. There's all this other stuff. We don't know where we define my data, but we know that it's somewhere previous to this. You can also click this button here, which if you hover over it, it says run all chunks above. So this will run everything up until this chunk of code. And look, now in the environment, the my data frame is now present. So now if we run this line of code, it will create this figure again. All right, we're almost done with this basic tutorial. If you like this video so far and want to finally feel confident with visualizing and managing your own data in R as an ecologist, then be sure to check out my online course on the basics of R for ecologists. The course is completely self-paced, and I take you by the hand through all the essentials of R using ecological data sets as well as exercises to test your learning along the way. The course is also fully accessible to everyone regardless of financial ability. So just click below to learn more and sign up for the upcoming enrollment period. All right, we're almost done with this basic tutorial. I want to show you a few other options you can change to make your final document look really nice. So we're going to go up here to the gear icon and change the theme. So we're going to go here to output options. And in this window here, we have the option of changing a few of the themes and look and feel of the final output our Markdown document. So one thing you can do is you can change the theme. So here, apply theme is set to default. We can change this to something else. I don't know, let's see what Cosmo looks like. And then click OK. Let's make this bigger. Now you have to knit it again for everything to change. See, everything's kind of just black and white, plain, nothing special. Let's knit this. And now we have this fancy new type of font. Things look a little bit different. The fonts are a little different. Some of the colors are a bit different. Let's try another one just to see what a few options might be. Let's try journal. I don't know what that is. Okay, and then knit. Again, a different type of font. Oh, look at that text. Yeah, very, very different. The links are now red. So you can play around with it and see what kind of look and feel you prefer. I think that's kind of fun because you can kind of make it personalized, make your own journal for learning R really kind of feel the way you want it to feel. And there's fancy ways to also change if you're into HTML and CSS, there's really fancy ways in which you can change a whole lot more about the document by applying a custom CSS file here. Again, not something I'm going to talk about, just mentioning it in case you happen to be really geeky like me and like that kind of stuff and know what a CSS file is. So again, you can apply different themes. You can also change the syntax highlighting. So you can change the colors that are used. So the same way that if you watch my lesson 3, I'll show you how to change the syntax highlighting in the editor in RStudio so that you can have this darker color scheme that makes it easier on your eyes when you're working for a long time. You can also change the color and look and feel of the code in the R Markdown document. So for example, let's select espresso here. Okay, let's knit. Now scroll down and look, the code looks quite different. So that's just another example of how you can tweak and modify the look and feel of your final document. And what you'll notice if we scroll up in our actual document is that those changes that we made in the output options get added to this header section. So of course we could have just even typed this in ourselves. So we have output HTML document, and then we have theme, journal, and highlight espresso. We could have typed these out ourselves, but you don't always know what all the different options are. And so it's just much easier to go through the output options in that way. But the thing in this that I think I like the most is that you can include a table of contents, a clickable table of contents to your final document, especially if you have a really big one and you want to refer to different sections really easily. When we knit this now, you'll see that we have this neat little table of contents that was added at the top, and the table of contents is organized based on the different headers that you have. So here we have header 1 or heading 1, hello world. Then we had heading 2 here is a subset of that. Heading 3 is a subset of that. So if we had another heading 2 here, let's do another section 2, run that. You'll see it creates this second section here, and then heading 3 or heading 4, 5, and 6 actually aren't included on here, but we do have. So I guess the table of contents goes down as low as heading 3, so kind of three brackets in, and we have the italic bold and bold italic that we had created here. And one more quick thing I want to show you without going into any more detail is the fact that there's all these other things you can do. You can change the size of the figures and other things. I think you can play around with it and figure it all out if you'd like. But everything I showed you so far is pretty much all you need to know to really create some satisfying documents that you can then go back and look at and use as a reference, share with other people, create tutorials, whatever it might be. It's a really, really powerful tool. I'm going to end this section with a really quick pointer that I think is really valuable and important to add to all of your R Markdown documents. This is something that I'm definitely guilty of not always doing, but I really, really recommend it. Add in a code chunk at the end of your R Markdown document with the function session and then with a capital I info and then just 2 parentheses. So if we run this, we get this output that shows us the version of R that we're working with, the platform. I'm using an Apple computer, running Mac OS Big Sur, and then a bunch of other information about the packages that I have installed and that I'm using. The reason this is important, so if we knit this, we can even add a little title here, session info. The reason this is important at the end of every R Markdown document is that sometimes things change. So R upgrades in certain versions, certain packages upgrade their versions, and certain things might not work again the same way in the future when you go back and you find this tutorial, you find this sheet that you made, and you try to enter the code as it is and you get an error. And that might be because the new version that you're using isn't completely compatible with everything that you created this sheet with in the past. And so there's ways to download older versions of R. There's ways of downloading older versions of different packages so that you can make it compatible. But at least that way you might know why there's an error, why something's not working exactly as you had planned. And so like I said, this is especially important when you want to share your R Markdown files with other people, just to make sure that they know what system you are running, to make sure that everything functions properly. But that's especially important. But then when you're using it for yourself, for your own purposes, for your own use, it's still kind of useful to include, just in case you come back to something after a while and things have upgraded and changed and you don't know why you're getting an error, and it might be because of that. So really simple to add at the end of your R Markdown files, but just wanted to slip that in as something important to do. And that's it. So next I want to show you how you can use R Markdown to learn R. And actually pretty much this whole tutorial has been showing you that very thing. I'm just gonna cover a few extra details because the point is, the end goal is to have a series of R Markdown documents that you can use as a reference for all the topics and code that you learned. So this converts learning R from pure practice and memorization to really more of a project-based learning environment. And since R Markdown is really simple and straightforward to use, basically just a text editor, you can start using it without really knowing much about R at all. And as you progress, you can document your entire experience, beginning with something as simple as how to define a variable, and then moving on to more advanced things. You basically create this whole document that you have as a reference in case you forget something, need to look something up. And then by creating it, it's also forcing you to learn the material better because you're essentially teaching it. So when you rewrite things in your own words, you're creating something, you're creating a teaching resource that others can use and you can use in the future. And through that teaching process, you're also going to be learning the material much better as well. So how do you do it? What are the important steps? Well, first, create a new RStudio project. So we're going to go to File, New Project. Save that. We're not going to use version control for now, just a new directory in your computer, new project. Let's save this in my R tutorials folder. We're going to save this in the, actually I created an R Markdown folder in here. And we'll call this Learning R Tutorial. Create the project. Now the reason for using RStudio projects is multifold. There's a lot of reasons. Long story short, I'm not going to go into this, but create a new R project. It'll just keep everything nice and neat and organized. And then whenever you want to go back and continue adding to this, just go in and open this learning. In this case, it's called learning R tutorial.rproj, but whatever your .rproj file is, just open that and it will open this whole new session here. Okay, then we're going to go to File, New R Markdown, and we'll call this the basics. So we're going to create first one that's called the basics. And the key is to create separate R Markdown documents as you go through each of the major sections of learning R. So for example, I created one that's called the basics. After you're done with that, maybe you'll create one that's called data visualization, one that's all about uploading data, one that's about data wrangling. So for example, in the course that I offer, the basics of R for ecologists, the way that course is broken down is into these major modules that cover these general themes. And so within each of those modules, you can create one R Markdown document to try to cover as much as you can within that section, or you might want to break it down even further. I wouldn't recommend including everything in just one file, just because it'll turn into this really huge R Markdown document and you have to scroll through it and all this stuff. So better to keep it kind of organized in these nice, neat sections. Alternatively, you could do one big R Markdown document with a clickable table of contents if you want to be really fancy, and then you can easily access the different sections in the final document. So that is another alternative. But the point is you want to break it down somewhat, even within the same document with different sections. So I'm just going to delete all of this like I did before so we can start with a blank slate. And heading 1 will be the basics. And so here, I guess this title, if we are making one document with everything and the clickable table of contents, we'll go in here, go to output options, include table of contents. And you see that popped up here, TOC, yes. And we'll call the title, instead of the basics, we'll say learning R. All right, so we have a section on the basics. And then here, you are just going to write whatever you want, whatever is helpful as you go along and learn the different sections of R. You can put in whatever comments, thoughts, ideas, problems, questions you want as you go along through it. If you're running into an issue where you're getting an error, you can actually keep that. There's probably a fancy way of doing it. For now, let's just say, so we've got a code here. This is an error. So if we try to knit this, you'll see it won't let us knit it. Oh, look, when we click knit, it wants us to save this file first. We hadn't saved it yet. So we're just going to call this learning R. When we try to knit it, we get this error because it won't knit the whole document when it stumbles upon an error. So if we run this just line by line to see what the issue is, unexpected symbol in this. The point is, this is not our code. We need to comment this out for it to work without an error. But let's say this is some kind of, let's make a different kind of error. Let's say my data, let's see, is my data greater, my variable, my number, let's call it my number, is my number greater than 5? If we knit this, we still get an error because if we run this line by line, we'll see the error message, object my number not found. We haven't defined my number yet, but let's say you don't know what that error really means. What you can do is you can copy this, paste it in here. We don't want that. We just want the error. Comment it out. Comment out the line that created the error. And now when you knit, you still have that R code, but now you have what the error was, a description of the error, plus the line that caused the error. So now if you share this document with someone, be like, look, I tried all these things. This is what I'm typing. This is the error that I'm getting. And then someone else could be like, oh, look, you didn't define my number yet. You need to go in and say, my number is 6, let's say. And now there shouldn't be an error anymore. So now if we run that, my number is greater than 5, true. And now if we knit the whole thing, you see that it works. It comes out, we have this output, and we can get rid of this error message here. So that way you can go along and keep practicing and trying different things as you go. Oh, and something I didn't show you is that you can actually, for the table of contents, so here we have the basics, because this is the first section. We don't have any other sections. When you go into the output options here, you can number section headings. So this will add numbers to the sections so you can actually follow along like chapter numbers. So now if we knit, you'll see that we have 1, the basics, and you'll see this 1 was added in front of the basics so that we know that it's that. And let's say we had a subsection on, so we'll call this heading 2. We'll use heading 2 for this. Defining variables. And we'll have another section on vectors, let's just say. So if we run this, now you can see we have the basics, and within the basics we have section 1.1 defining variables and section 1.2 on vectors, and you can see that these added into the table of contents as well. So that's it really, and basically just fill out the document as you're going through the different lessons, whether it's through my course or any other tutorials or courses online. Fill out these documents, create them, save them, print them out even, go back and use them whenever you need to as a refresher. But even just the process of creating them, even if you don't ever look at them again, it really will help you be able to grasp these topics a lot more, because it turns learning R into a project where you're actually creating this really cool resource that you could eventually even share with other people. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to click the like button down below. It really helps me be able to share my videos as much as I can, get them out there, get as many people to see them as possible. Be sure to subscribe if you want to get more updates whenever I post new videos. And again, if you really like this and want to kind of take it a step further, be sure to check out my course on the basics of R for ecologists. There's a link down below in the description, and you can subscribe right there to find out when the next course enrollment opens up. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.